And then we have our ankle. I've gestured the foot out as kind of this sock, which is again how I'd like to start it, or I choose to start it. So that would always be the way that I would lay it in. But it would be fun to maybe talk about that or look at that really briefly. So let's do the same thing for this. And let me show you just how easy it can be to draw a foot in the same type of thinking. You know, with the hand, I just subdivided the parts: palm, knuckles, fingers, and assigned each one of them a perspective. So to start out with the foot, when I gesture a foot, I don't do more than 4 lines. There's always one that would be a rhythmic curve from the front of the leg through the tendon ramp to the toe. And then I would do across the ground, 2. That's kind of the toe box or its width. 3, up to the heel, and then 4, the Achilles. And it's always resembling in some sense like a sock. And then I start to fill it in with geometries to represent the different configurations of bones. So right where the neck, let's say, of the sock would get thinnest, I'm going to put a sphere, and that represents one of the bones in your tarsus group, which is the wrist of the foot. And then let's build, just to establish a connection, I always draw here the ankle as a wrench that grabs that ball. So this is just a form intersection, right? I'm not drawing a wrench at all. It's just a box that's subordinate to the sphere that's having to wrap and overlap in order to show some kind of continuity or more coherent, complex structure. And then, so this is going to have a front and a side. So I can see the ankle is having a width and a depth. So that would be the kind of the look. That's the tibia fibula combo touching the talus, and then so this is a surfacing line now. So I do this a lot again, just explore the complex geometry of what I'm developing. And then this is going to, so now we're going to have in the foot, different from the hand, a longitudinal and transverse arch. So the perspective forms or geometries echo this. So let's say I'm going to draw the planes of the foot, and we just think about the bones. The next part of the tarsus group would be the same, similar to the palm of the hand. It's like a deck of cards that comes forward and would have a bit of a peak. So you could curve that box if you like. And then if I go backwards, we would have our calcaneus, the heel back here, which I'm going to represent as a cylinder. So I'm trying to think of a cylinder, right? But I'm only showing you this part because the rest is going behind. And then I'm going to just put that bone, kind of like a half of a Coke can going back. So I'm really in this focused on analyzing the bones of the foot minus the cartilage in the same way that we did the hand. Try to put the emphasis on the bone, and then later I can come back and do another form intersection where I would map on soft tissue. So this would be a growth out and over. So that, so this is just showing you how you would kind of smooth it out, right, to be a little more natural. But that would just be the padding of the bottom of the foot mapped over the geometries of the bone. So that would be my second. Then I would do this is more the palm of the foot. So we'd have our tarsus, metatarsus, and then toes. So the metatarsus I design as a perspective slide. So if you just did a slide coming out like this, basically a curved box, that would be what I'm drawing. I just start it from the points that I left off at and then kind of sweep that out with the ground plane when it makes contact. So that would be here. And then the toes can be dealt with in the exact same way that you did the fingers in the hand. Right, so this would be bridged with more cartilage, just FYI. So that's going to change the relationship here to have a more proportionate feel to what we're dealing with in the image. The only difference is the big toe tends to be wider and boxier and points towards the ground pretty consistently. And that should all make sense from a form function standpoint because you balance on these bones in a way you don't with your hand. So all the bones are wider, boxier. And then here would be the second one. So just proximal distal, just like your thumb. But I'm keeping it pretty geometric still. So for the feet, I usually do this for a big toe, and then the next 3 toes work together, and they have this gestural drop because they all are gripping the floor or the bottom of the sole of your shoe. Right, so you can divide them and individually assign them sphere, straight, cylinder, just like we did in the fingers. But I think another way you could treat these is like the next 3 toes are just stairs. So if you go, since we're building this on this plane, get a little closer, it comes down, out, down, out, down. And that's because it's proximal, middle, distal, right, for the bones and their progression. But they all aim to the ground. So big toe kind of points up. Next 3 toes point down. So I'm just creating these geometric stairs or planar stairs. And the pinky toe is just a kind of a ball that lives on the side. I don't really get too much in the way of planes from that one. So that might be what we kind of see inside, or I could try to imagine inside. And then just like everything else we've been discussing, I could start to clean that up, soften it by the addition of like the extensor here, or the padding on the bottom, or smoothing out some of these planes, or doing a better job with form intersections for the padding, which I haven't yet worked to include. But at the very least, it gives you an idea of how I would start to generate the perspective around a foot. So you could take this as another odd combination of spheres, boxes, strips, cylinders, and then that would be kind of put there. And then the last thing here is just kind of getting this back leg. So let's put that in. So you have a completed structure. So this is just going to get overlapped. Let's leave this one as a cylinder. In terms of how these are placed, I think of these as existing inside of the skin. So with some distance, because I'm trying to imagine with the addition of a muscle shape that would then be the contour. So it's kind of like gesture is the closest thing to being the bone. The cylinders are somewhere in between bone and the skin. And then the addition of the muscle would bring you right to the contour. So here's the lower leg. Let's map in this foot now that we talked about it. So here's my sock gesture. So we'll leave this one kind of more gestural, this one set up at least with the perspective of the lower leg, and then this would be the follow through for the bone.